Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. We just finished conversations in Nigeria where gubernatorial elections were held in 28 states across the federation. Now we move on to South Africa, where the police have arrested dozens of people ahead of protests by the opposition party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, who are calling for a national shutdown to protest against rolling blackouts and pressure President Cyril Ramaphosa to resign. The police confiscated 24,300 tires, which may have been used to erect barricades, and are trying to prevent the protest from spiraling into violence. Some sporadic disruptions were reported, and some stores, factories, and government offices closed their doors, but most towns were business as usual and airports were fully operational.
The EFF has shaken up South African politics since it was founded in 2013. And it calls to nationalize land, banks and mines that have found resonance, especially among many poor black township residents. The party won 11% of the vote in the last national elections 4 years ago. However, its calls for a national shutdown have been criticized by business leaders as massively counterproductive to the efforts to put the economy back on a sustainable growth. Now, joining us to discuss all of this, we have Vusi Gombi, a political analyst and research assistant at the University of Johannesburg. We also have joining us via telephone Commissar Themi Mswame, a member of the Central Command Team and of EFF. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I'd like to start with Commissar Themi Mswame. What are the specific demands of your organization, your political party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, during the national shutdown? And how has the day gone by? What's the level of compliance by members of, by citizens of South Africa?
Thank you for having us on your show, and greetings to your viewers and listeners. Well, our demands were that the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, must step down. And secondly, we want stable electricity supply. And we've had a very successful national shutdown because most of the major cities and towns in South Africa, the businesses have not been operational. Taxis were running around with no commuters. Although people did not come out to the streets, but we did have businesses shut down, which is or was our intention to make sure that the capitalists do not continue to function as usual.
All right, thank you so much, Commissar. Now, I want to bring in Vusi into all of this now. Now, Vusi, you're a political analyst. Can you provide more analysis of the EFF's political ideology and how it actually differs from that of the ruling party, the African National Congress? Because we've seen them consistently complain about the governance of the ANC and even the presidency of Cyril Ramaphosa.
The Economic Freedom Fighters in South Africa is a socialist movement that seeks to ensure that the strategic sectors of the economy represent the broad demographics of the population. It is a splinter from the African National Congress, and that's why you will find that most of their policies actually borrowed from the ANC. And the agency in the Economic Freedom Fighters is the fact that the ANC left a vacuum when it when it assumed government in 1994, and it abandoned its socialist ideas, it abandoned its transformative objectives, and fostered liberal ideologies. And there was a vacuum to who in South Africa is going to champion the socialist perspectives forward. And that's when, obviously, the EFF, through the expulsion of Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu in 2012, emerged now as the voice of the downtrodden, as the voice of the voiceless in South Africa, as a party whom the poorest of the poor find refuge in, when they take into consideration that in 1994 the government changed, but the social structure remained the same. So then the EFF then becomes this home to accommodate South Africans that do not feel like have a place in the economy, who are not accommodated in the social structure of South Africa, because obviously of the failures of government to transform the country. So then EFF, then because obviously nature does not allow a vacuum, EFF then becomes that political party that ensures that the poorest, the marginalized are represented in the political dynamics of the country.
Thank you, Vusi. Now, Commissioner Nsane, how did the police, and I'm asking this because of the background to this national shutdown demonstrations, President Cyril Ramaphosa did deploy members of the South African National Defence Force because of, anxiety over a breakdown in law and order following what happened during the Zuma riot last year. So how did the police and other security agencies respond to the protest? How many people were arrested during the protests? And what's the general conduct of law enforcement with regards to the national shutdown by the EFF? Hello, Commissar, are you there?
Commissar, can you hear us?
We seem to have connection issues with our audio, but Vusi, from your vantage point, I'm sure you've been monitoring the news and you've been following what has been going on in South Africa. Could you respond to these questions? How have the police and law enforcement agents been dealing with the situation so far? And has there been any breakdown in law and order?
Hello.
All right.
Okay, Vusi, just hold your thoughts there. I think we have Commissar back on the line. Go ahead.
Hello,
please.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Oh, well, as I was saying, as you have noticed in the African continent, with most of the liberation movements, they tend to want to hang on to power and therefore suppress the voices of its citizens. As you might have noticed in Nigeria in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, with the NSAS, where the army would then release live ammunitions on its citizens. So what the South African government did today, it unleashed a very strong form of military and security forces against a peaceful protest, anticipating an overthrow, because they are so uncomfortable with the way they are running the country, and they realize that they have so many mistakes and they have so many outstanding issues that they need to address, and the voices of the people need to be suppressed in a manner that they unleash the military forces on South Africans. So what they did, if you have noticed, because the protest started at 12 o'clock in the morning today, they ended up unleashing, shooting at students, unarmed, in order to instill fear on the citizens of South Africa. However, it works out differently in South Africa because we have so many military that was unleashed on us during the apartheid. So it does not scare us anymore to unleash police and to unleash security forces on us, because it has been done before, like the Sharpeville massacre. We have a history of being shot at. It really does not scare us anymore. And I think what Ramaphosa did today, he really wasted state resources on a very peaceful protest. We might not know the exact numbers of how many of our people have been arrested, but even those arrests was just to instill so much fear on our people.
All right, Vusi, still on this, the technicalities of the police and how they reacted to the protest. I mean, in Cyril Ramaphosa's defense, if you look at the Zuma protest, it was said to be been hijacked by thugs. So do you think he went too far by unleashing the police at the protesters? And how far, what was the spread of this protest and how has it affected businesses in South Africa?
Certainly, especially if you look into the deployment of the army, I do believe that the president and the government went far. And obviously, they used the 2021 July unrest as a justification. But you cannot compare the two because the July unrest, if you will, was an unled protest. I don't even want to call it an insurrection or an uprising. It was an unled protest. And that's why it got out of control. So, but if then you've got a political party that says we are going to initiate a shutdown in the country in response to the failures of government, you know that if things go wrong, the first point of departure, the first point of departure becomes the political party that is organizing. So there's no way that the government can justify unleashing the army on its own people when the same government fails to unleash the army to investigate the human trafficking syndicates that happen in this country. When the government can unleash the army to guard our porous borders, when they can unleash the army. I mean, if you look at our criminal stats from the third quarter, October to December 2022, show that South Africa is the crime capital of the world, the murder capital of the world, the rape capital of the world. But where are those soldiers to fight all of these things? So you unleash soldiers to guard what? For me, I don't believe that the deployment of the army can be justified. But obviously, the South African police services ought to be deployed because obviously they have to make sure that there's law and order. They have to work with the people who are organizing the march to make sure that there is law and order on the ground and things like that. But for me, the number of resources that were deployed by this government on this march, the same government that tells us that there are no resources when they have to fight criminalities on day-to-day issues. I think what this protest has done is to expose our government to say, actually, they do have the capabilities to address lawlessness in this country. They just choose not to do it. They only do it when they feel threatened. And this is what we saw today.
Okay, thank you, Vusi. Now, Commissioner Thembi Spane, I'm not a prophet, but I know that one of the demands of the EFF is for President Cyril Ramaphosa to resign, and he's definitely not going to do that because elections are next year. And some have described the EFF as having excellent PR and that they know how to make a lot of noise without providing much solution. So what is next for the EFF? President Cyril Ramaphosa will not resign. You still have issues with load shedding. What is the EFF's alternative to this? And what do they propose to fix South Africa's perennial electricity problems?
We are represented in Parliament and we are busy advocating for his removal. As you have seen that we've been boycotting most of his speeches and his announcement in Parliament. And a lot of people did not believe when we said Zuma must be removed from his presidency, and it has happened. So I would just say people need to hang on and be patient and watch this one play out. We have to understand that Cyril Ramaphosa is a constitutional delinquent, and his time has come to an end. And EFF, yes, people might say that we are very good in our PR, but however, we don't make promises. We commit to everything that we do, and we are going to push it in every avenue that we get through courts, which we believe that have been captured by Cyril Ramaphosa. But we are going to push it in each and every platform that we get, that Cyril must resign. Because as you may know, that it is believed that Cyril Ramaphosa had resigned before, and he was convinced by his comrades to say, no, don't submit that letter of resignation. So he's going to make a lot of mistakes that will definitely force him to step down, like he has thus far by shooting on innocent citizens.
All right, now, Vusi, still looking at the activities of the EFF, when you were giving your analysis, you said they were also a part of the ANC before. Judging by their actions, and we're seeing calls for the industrialization of the economy, that is the best way to go. Do you feel that the EFF has gone too far? And how threatened do you think Cyril Ramaphosa is by these protests that they have staged?
Oh, I don't think they've went too far. Remember that the EFF is a protest movement by nature. And it's nothing new. Even during President Zuma's time, this is what they did. They went to this. The only difference now is that they are protesting against the media darling, darling of the West. So that's why you see even the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition, was not part of the movement. Because although Cyril Ramaphosa has largely failed in his duties as president of the country, he's someone who's agreeable more to liberal policies. So the only difference now is that the EFF now is championing this alone. So, but it is in their nature. That's what history says. So even what they're doing, making the president uncomfortable, the chants in parliament are nothing new. So I wouldn't say that they went too far, because that's what they've done, and they are consistent in identifying themselves as a protest movement. But I don't think it might work, because in order for this to work, there must also be a revolt from within the ANC, the governing party. That's what also helped opposition parties to unseat Jacob Zuma. Because remember that opposition parties, when contested, when they were protesting for the removal of the former president, he was supported by the ANC until he lost power within the party. And then that's when they sent him to the vultures. So the call for President Ramaphosa to will only succeed if in the African National Congress, who can champion this from within, inside the party, right? Obviously, now you've got a new state deputy president, Paul Mashatile, quite ambitious. You've got Palapala hanging over the cloud of the president. It's still not resolved. So there are still ANC internal dynamics that will also help the EFF, but on its own, they won't be able to unseat the president. They'll need his enemies within the ruling party to achieve that goal, as they did with Jacob Zuma.
Thank you very much, Vusi. Finally, comments before we wrap up, if you can, in less than a minute. Do you think the EFF going into general elections next year will do better than the 11% of national votes it got 4 years ago?
We have a body called the Ipsos. I don't know if you've done a little bit of research on it. They predicted that the ANC will definitely drop below 50% and the EFF will definitely increase to above 13% next year. So as long as we can, drop the ANC below their 50% majority, at least then we can be able to give guidance and have our policies implemented in Parliament through coalition governments, because currently, with them having an absolute majority, it disadvantages a lot of South Africans.
Thank you very much, esteemed guest, Vusi Gombe, political analyst and research assistant at the University of Johannesburg, and also Commissar Themi Msane. Thanks for your insight, your time and contribution to the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.